What we witnessed that night in Berlin wasn't just a World Cup final. It was the collapse of an empire before the astonished eyes of billions of people. And today, years later, the wounds remain open and throbbing in the souls of those who breathe football. Pure World Cup brings you a revelation that shakes the very foundations of nostalgia, because Gianluigi Buffon, the wall that prevented French glory, has finally broken his silence about the Greek tragedy involving Zinedine Zidane. We're talking about an event that changes the perception of history, because it wasn't just a red card, but the sporting suicide of the greatest genius of that generation under the German sky. Football is cruel. Football is relentless. And what Buffon confesses now proves that even the gods of the stadium felt the impact of that header that echoed around the world like a cannon shot. Imagine the pressure of knowing you're the last obstacle between redemption and chaos, and watching the greatest artist of the ball get lost in a labyrinth of fury. The story of the 2006 season never truly ended. It merely lay dormant in the shadows of respect and sepulchral silence between two giants who shared the locker room at Juventus. It is unacceptable to think that an athlete of Zidane's magnitude ended his career in such a visceral and somber way, leaving the planet in a state of absolute shock. Buffon's account is not just an interview. It is a manifesto of grief for a sport that saw its greatest dancer leave the stage shackled by his own impulsiveness. Prepare your hearts, because we are about to plunge into the abyss of that final, where elegance gave way to hot blood, and where the glory of Italy mingled with the melancholy of seeing an idol fall from grace before millions. Close your eyes and try to visualize the war zone that was the Berlin Olympic Stadium in that interminable extra time, where the air seemed to be lacking in the lungs of each player. Zidane had already written the beginning of the script with that audacious chip shot on the penalty, defying gravity and logic itself against a Buffon who seemed an insurmountable giant between the posts. The game was on a dangerous emotional balance, with Materazzi equalizing and the tension rising to unbearable levels for any ordinary human being. But the moment that defines Buffon's immortality and Zidane's despair happens minutes before the fateful miss. The Frenchman rises higher than everyone else. The ball travels to its destination. The cry of goal was in the throat of all of France to seal the second World Cup title. But Gianluigi Buffon performs a cinematic miracle, deflecting that ball over the crossbar with his fingertips in a superhuman reflex. That play was the emotional trigger, the mental breaking point of a genius who realized that perfection was being blocked by fate. Soon after, the world stopped. Time froze when we saw Zidane turn on Materazzi and deliver that blow that buried any chance of a glorious farewell. Buffon was there. He saw the scene up close. He smelled the gunpowder in the air, and today he confesses that he was shaken, that his sportsman's heart bled when he saw a Juventus teammate, a man he deeply admired, being escorted off the pitch under the weight of shame. It wasn't just a play in the game, it was the collapse of a narrative of perfection that Zidane carried for years, and that ended brutally, dryly, and painfully for those who love the art of football. The cold analysis of that expulsion forces us to question the posture of the heroes and the mediocrity of the provocateurs within the four lines. Where was the emotional control of the French captain when the team most needed his technical and spiritual leadership to secure the trophy? The criticism needs to be harsh because a champion who has won everything cannot allow himself to be seduced by the tactical low blows of an opponent who used psychology as a weapon of war. Buffon reveals that he never had the courage to broach the subject with Zidane in all those years of casual encounters and mutual friendship, and this says a lot about the depth of the scar left by that red card. Coach Raymond Domenech passively watched the collapse of his biggest star, failing to protect his genius from the fire he himself started. On the other hand, Buffon's stance is one of rare nobility in an increasingly selfish and superficial sport. The Italian admits that his feelings were contradictory because, while defending his country, he lamented the melancholic end of one of the most elegant players in history. It's a slap in the face to those who think football is only about blind rivalry. The respect Buffon shows by avoiding the subject for decades proves that Zidane's pain is a wound that time has not been able to heal. The blame lies not only with the impulsive act, but with the atmosphere of impunity that surrounded the initial provocation. Analyzing this scenario today makes us realize how football lost the chance to honor its greatest legend with the dignity he deserved, all because of a second of madness that transformed the greatest stage on earth into a public condemnation court. The consequences of that night spanned decades and shaped how we understand internal crises and the impact of public image in high-performance sport. The world press, at the time, massacred Zidane's image, turning the national hero into a temporary pariah, while Italy celebrated the title with a shadow of doubt over the nature of that victory marked by the incident. The internal crisis in the French Federation was immediate, ending a golden era that took years to rebuild under new leadership. Buffon's account now adds fuel to the fire of international repercussions because it shows that the wound is still sensitive for the protagonists of that drama. Imagine the weight of carrying this silence at every gala dinner, at every FIFA awards ceremony, at every veterans game where glances meet, but words about the past are forbidden. The repercussions of Buffon's statements today serve to humanize these footballing demigods, showing that behind the trophies lies a burden of regret and empathy that the public rarely sees. The image of Zidane passing by the World Cup trophy without being able to touch it as he walked to the locker room became the ultimate symbol of sporting frustration. This off-field impact defined careers, influenced signings, and changed how elite clubs monitored the mental health of their athletes. The football world is still trying to understand how elegance could be defeated by anger in a fraction of a second, and Buffon's words are the final reminder that no one, not even the greatest genius, emerges unscathed from a tragedy foretold. This revelation by Buffon is the final point in a chapter we all thought we knew, but which now gains a layer of profound and disturbing humanity. Football isn't just about the one-all score that led to penalties. It's about what happens in the silence of the locker rooms and in the eyes of those who watched history being torn apart. Zidane was a sacred monster, a champion who won everything, but who ultimately carries the weight of a painful situation that neither time nor subsequent glories have been able to completely erase. Buffon was the hero who stopped the Frenchman on the field, but he was also the friend who protected him off it through respect and discretion. Now I want to hear the voices of those of you who experience the intensity of this sport with us here at Pure World Cup. What would you do if you were in Buffon's place? Would you have the same nobility of spirit? Or would you use your rival's mistake to glorify your own achievement? Does football need more athletes with this human perspective? Or is the only thing that matters the dry result on the table? Leave a like if you felt the same indignation and emotion when remembering this historic moment that changed the course of world sport. Comment below with all the sincerity of a fan's heart. Who among you forgives Zidane's behavior for the genius he gave to the world? And who would you fire today if you saw a player from your team do the same in a championship final? Subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes where we'll be speaking frankly about the biggest scandals and glories in sports. The debate is open, and the truth hurts. But it needs to be said here on the channel that isn't afraid to confront the giants head-on. Who is truly to blame for the pain that Zidane and Buffon carry to this day? The answer is up to you.